Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I should say welcome again to the Progressive Soapbox. It's 3:50 in the morning. I'm awake. I can't sleep. When I'm awake and can't sleep, I decide I want to do the news. Let me check my mic before I start. And guys, please feel free to hit the bell. Please feel free to subscribe. And if you like the content or if you find that midway through, holy shit, I like this guy, please hit the like button. It would be awesome. And of course, Patreon, PayPal, Super Cash, etc., etc. But you support the content even if you just watch, even if you like it, even if you share the video. You're supporting the content, and I thank you very much. I came across a video on Sky News. Now, you've known my disposition on this. It's not so much that I don't believe that the Russians couldn't do it. I just believe that they don't know that, and that they've been pushing this idea that the Russians did it for this kind of political effect. I would make the case that they want to obfuscate from the issues dealing with Brexit that they don't have an answer to, but whatever. They don't know. They don't know. They've made assertions. They've made saying Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia did it. And people like me just said, where's your evidence? Boris Johnson comes out and outright lies, saying that the person from pouring down Britain's own chemical weapons factory backed them up. They did not. They did not. So the question becomes, what is Britain using to implicate Russia in this? Why have they been so heavy-handed in the implication of Russia in this? And if they didn't have evidence from pouring down backing it up, what are they using? What are they using? You should not just automatically accept the intelligence for this stuff, knowing the intelligence failures that have taken place over the last 20 years. It would be insane to do so. I'm going to show the story itself. I'm going to interject certain points. I saw 2 minutes of this and I saw, okay, I can see why this is going bad. Now, I used to watch videos with my audience when I first started my channel. I don't do it as much as often, but every so often I do it. I'm going to let this be one of them. Like I said, I saw the first 2 minutes. You're going to see me inject comments throughout the video, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to show the entirety of the video here. It's 18 minutes long, so I'm going to try to limit my comments, to limit the time that this takes. But let's see. Let's take a look at the article first, because I want to give a little context of what took place and the controversy surrounding this. Because Sky News sounded like they were fibbing a little bit, especially this woman in particular. She's the one that did the interview, Kay Burrell. It's Burrell? Yeah, Burley, I'm sorry. Kay Burley. Let's take a look at this. This is Craig Murray. This is the person who's being interviewed. He's the former ambassador to Uzbekistan from the UK, and apparently was called to account for what was taking place with they're accusing Russia of. An extremely boring interview. Do not watch. I've managed to get a hold of a copy, which you can see for yourself here, my lengthy interview with Sky News about Skripals yesterday, which Sky refused to put online because they allege I was boring. With the warning, you might therefore be very bored. You may watch it if you wish. Yes, I wish. I wish. And I wish my audience to watch it. Kay Burley. Craig says, I am wondering this too. My extended 20-minute Sky News interview yesterday has vanished. Not available on any Sky platform, and I confess to being a subscriber, being a cricket and a golf nut. Oh, Craig, maybe you just weren't that interesting. Sorry, buddy. That's Kay Burley. That's Kay Burley. This woman. I was going to be a dick and use that picture, but I said no. Don't be a dick and use that picture. Don't do that. Don't be that person. Or this picture. Don't be that person. I don't like when people undercut other people in this way. He's being earnest. He's not being a hack. He's not being an asshole. He's not being a prick. He's just asking, where's my video? Why haven't you put up the video on Sky News? Sorry, buddy, maybe you're just not that interesting. It gets worse. She continues to hit him in the knees. Kay Burley did appear to suggest in reply to persistent questioning from Tamor Nabil that Sky News couldn't put the interview online as they did not record it and did not hold a copy, which is plainly untrue and would be illegal under their broadcast license. Live interviews are live. Recorded interviews are pre-recorded to play out on a live show. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to choose a ribbon for my hair. Have a nice day. Your questions to me are so insignificant. They matter to me so little that I need to get a ribbon for my locks. I need to get a ribbon for my hair. Fair enough. Fair enough. I understand you need to get a ribbon for your hair. He's just asking you, why isn't his video on Sky News? Why are you being surly and dickish to me when I'm asking you questions? You. I'm talking to you. Yeah, you. Why are you being so surly and dickish to Craig Murray? Craig Murray is asking you questions. Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. Look at me. Look at me. I'm over here. Why are you being dickish to Craig Murray when Craig Murray is just asking you questions? The Skripal case is somewhat bogus. Or if it's not bogus, the government needs to prove it. They need to get their evidence. It's not that people won't necessarily believe it, but they need to have evidence to believe it. Your country was part and parcel to the worst foreign policy disaster over the last 20 years, when you invaded a country and killed 1 million people on the pretext of intelligence. Now the government, once again, has intelligence. Shouldn't you have something a little bit more for it, seeing as the failures of your prior government's actions? Let's keep going. My perspective on the interview was that the interviewer became aggressive and sarcastic, increasingly shrill at the apparent effort to discredit me was not going well, and resorting eventually to asking about the extraneous matter but the Skripals. I strongly suspect it was not me being boring, but the strange performance by Kate Burley, which motivated Sky to bury the interview. But judge for yourself. It is my policy when invited to journalists to give considered and courteous answers to particular questions that are being asked. This is as opposed to what politicians do, which is spout pre-prepared sound bites irrespective of what they're being asked. I appreciate that mine is a very old-fashioned approach, and that may lead you to be frustrated about areas I do not cover, but I also make no attempts to look slick or glib. I realize in this modern age that many may not be good PR, but the benefits remains that in the long term, people will see me as polite and thoughtful old gentleman and feel less disposed to share the obvious contempt towards me that they have for the media and the political classes. All right, let's see it for ourselves. Let's be the judge. Come on.
So, fight between the UK and Russia as to what exactly happened in Salisbury, who poisoned the former ex-KGB agent and his daughter, Yulia. Yulia Skripal is now out of danger. She is awake. As far as her father is concerned, he is still in a coma. But who poisoned him? Let's speak to the former British ambassador to Uzbekistan, Craig Murray. He joins us live from Edinburgh. Hello to you, Mr. Murray. Thank you for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Who did it, do you think?
Well, we don't know. There are a range of possible suspects, of which both the Russian state and Russian non-state actors have to be among the suspects. But there are many other possibilities, including, of course, the obvious possibility that somebody did it in order to try to damage Russia by making it look like them.
Who else apart from Russia?
Well, this nerve agent was, if it is a Novichok, and the excellent interview you did yesterday with the scientist from Porton Down said it was a Novichok or of that family, and Novichoks have been produced in a number of countries, including in Iran recently, which was reported to the OPCW by the Iranians. The Soviet facility at Nukus in Uzbekistan, which I visited while I was ambassador there, after it had been decommissioned by the Americans, had people working at it from all over the Soviet Union, including, for example, Ukrainians. And it's perfectly possible that Ukrainians may wish to damage Russia's reputation, given that Russia annexed Crimea a little while ago. So
let me just explore that with you, if I may, please, Mr. Murray. Lots of time, so we can talk as long as you like. Let me just explore that with you. Why would Ukraine do this on British soil and potentially murder a British police officer at the same time?
Well, I don't think whoever did it had any particular interest in injuring the British police officer. That was obviously...
Just to make a point here, she's asking him a question that he can't possibly answer. Who did it? Now, the answer, and the only answer that she really wants, is Russia did it. Now, he doesn't do that. He's sane and rational and say, I have no idea who did it. Who could have done it? She asks again. Well, Ukraine might have done it. I mean, if you're probing me for an answer, I'm going to give you an answer. Ukraine could have did it. They could have. They wanted to tar the image of Russia in this regard, in regards to how these guys interact with one another, and they want the West to be positioned against Russia because you have neo-Nazis who's fighting the Russian government. So, answer the question of who did it, he gave her an answer. Here's another possible suspect. Those facilities were in parts of Ukraine. Here's another possible suspect. Let's hear her answer. She doesn't like this. Why would Ukraine do this? Why would Russia do this? Doesn't that question work both ways? You're accusing Russia of doing this. Now, you're asking him for another plausible answer. He's giving you a plausible answer. And you're saying, why would they do that? But you can ask the same question. Why would Russia do this? Why would Russia do this? Let's keep going. I'm going to be loyal opposition for you, Britain. No, I'm not in Britain. But I still take issue with this idea of Britain being a NATO nation. And I understand the consequences are also for America. Because whatever you do in this regard, we're going to follow suit. My loyal opposition here is not just for you, it's also for us. Let's hear him out. Let's let him keep going.
As we say when we kill people with drones abroad and kill innocent people at the same time, we call it collateral damage.
I'm aware of the term.
When I fear a police officer was collateral damage, he obviously wasn't targeted. I'm not saying Ukraine did it. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
What I'm saying is Ukraine has is one of many countries which has a capability to produce this, which had scientists working in the laboratories which used to produce it in Soviet times. And it is pretty obvious to everybody that the Ukraine, for example, would have a strong interest in damaging Russia internationally, given that they're engaged in a proxy war.
But not necessarily with one of its allies, which is Britain, when Britain has supported Ukraine in its tussle, its battle, its fight, its war with Russia.
Yes, but this hasn't...
Britain has supported neo-Nazis in the Ukraine in the same way that the United States has supported neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. Call it what it is. Call it what it is. Don't use euphemisms. It's tussle. It's war. We've supported neo-Nazis in that government in a proxy war with Russia. Would a country that is engaged in a proxy war with Russia have an incentive to tar the image of the country that it's at war with? Yes. Would the Ukraine give two shits that it was in Britain? No. With the entire point of it being that it needs to be in Britain for it to work that way? Yes. The answer is yes. You jumped immediately to Russia. You didn't jump to Ukraine. You didn't even suspect the Ukraine. You didn't even look potentially at the Ukraine. You have a vested interest in behaving a particular way. So does Ukraine. Saying that the Ukraine is your ally means nothing. Does the United States spy on its allies? Yes, the United States spies on its allies. Does the United States have renditions in countries that are allies? No. The answer is yes. We've had countries that have outraged other countries when we've done that in their countries. I'm making the point that countries have operations in countries that they're allies with. It would be comically ridiculous to believe that the Ukraine will be completely restrained in each and everything that it does just because it's supposed to be allies with Britain in this regard. Not just that. It hinges on the idea that they're out, that Britain looks at someone else. Meaning the whole point is to make it look like Russia did it. Not that the Ukraine did it. You're assuming that Ukraine assumed that Britain was going to jump to the idea that the Ukraine did it. The United States jumped to the conclusion that Russia hacked the election. Russia didn't hack anything. I mean, when they looked at it, it was the Department of Homeland Security that was roaming around those files. You may want to say that Russia tried to influence the election if you want to say that, okay, Facebook and Twitter ads, fair enough. Fair enough. But they're Facebook and Twitter ads. They didn't change any votes. They didn't tweak the system in order to make it plausible for Hillary Clinton or anything else. Scanning is not indicative of hacking. That's my point. They jumped to the conclusion. They didn't care about the investigation. They didn't care about the evidence. Within a few days, Theresa May comes out and said Russia did it. Now, you asked him for another plausible explanation. He gave you a plausible explanation. Russia is in a conflict with the Ukraine. The Ukraine would like to tarnish the reputation and image of Russia, even if that means hurting their financial ties through sanctions that may be placed if they automatically jump to the conclusion that Russia did it. And they do this stuff and they attack or line up with somebody who's their enemy. He's giving you a plausible explanation. Now, you can say you don't believe that explanation. You can say you don't like that explanation. But he's giving you a plausible explanation. Let's keep going. I just want to make this point clear. People always... My conclusion to this wasn't, I don't know who did it. That's why you have investigations. I'm not going to immediately jump to the conclusion that Russia did it, because there are massive consequences for immediately jumping to that conclusion. So I don't want to invoke those consequences unnecessarily. Whether it's for Britain, whether it's for the United States. The rational, sane choice is, you guys may absolutely be right, but you need evidence and information to make sure that everyone else knows that you're right. This is not magic. This is not voodoo. We don't use psychic behavior to make a determination on who's guilty and who's not. In fact is, the UK has burned its bridges with trust us. We know what we're talking about. We got the intelligence. Another plausible explanation. Let's see if she accepts it.
Hasn't actually caused any conflict between Britain and Ukraine, has it? Whereas it has caused enormous international embarrassment to Russia just before the World Cup, which it is rather unlikely that Russia would wish to bring upon itself. I'm not saying it's not Russia. That is a possibility. But that there are no other possibilities is obviously a nonsense. Russia is also engaged, obviously, heavily in Syria, and that brings it into conflict with the interests of a number of countries in that region who may wish to damage Russia internationally. So there are plenty of possibilities, both in terms of motivation and in terms of the ability to produce the substance.
Was it Britain?
I very much doubt it. We don't know. That there is no evidence, actual evidence, produced at this time of who did it. And until we actually get some evidence, then I'm maintaining an open mind.
Okay. Apart from what we heard from the head of Porton Down yesterday, there are other planks, presumably, of evidence as well, which is why Britain has come to the conclusion, the British government has come to the conclusion that it was Russia.
The operative word in that is presumably. Presumably. Your government lost a major plank. The high priestess of our society are scientists. The experts. The apolitical expert. Now, the Porton Down scientists said, we can't make a determination where this is. And we believe that it's Novichok. But no, we can't determine where this is. Fact is, there are multiple places that can produce this particular substance, of this grade of substance. It's not just a particular substance. So it's like a category of substances. But there are multiple places that can produce this particular stuff. So we don't necessarily know where this came from. They lost that plank. Now she says, presumably, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean, presumably? It means that you don't know. It means that what he's telling you is right. That is tacit approval of what he's telling you, because as a flat fact, if you don't know, you have to be open to other considerations of something may actually be true. He's telling you there could be somebody else. I don't know. I'm keeping an open mind. We need to have an investigation. Until an investigation takes place, I don't know. And as a flat fact, neither do you. Neither do you. This interviewer who's pushing him on it. Let's keep going. She's done nothing wrong at this point. I think the interview is going perfectly fine. He has a position. She clearly has a disposition, regardless of whether she's trying to say that she's neutral or not. She has a particular disposition about this particular case. Let's keep going.
That, presumably, that information has been shared with our European and Western allies, which is why they have chosen to believe that and, as a result, expel Russian diplomats. So it's not just what we heard from Portendine, is the argument that we're hearing from the government.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense. That's political nonsense. All of these countries on the West are in alliance with one another. Bob likes Tom, likes Jim, likes, Gordon. This is similar to, hey, Jimmy Dore, do you think there's anything wrong with Cenk Uygur taking all of that money and saying he's still going to have a lefty network? Do you think he can remain a lefty while at the same token taking all of this money from interests that are affiliated with the Democratic Party? Do you think that will make him more or less inclined with Hillbots and Democrats in the corporatist sect of the party? Well, no. If Cenk Uygur takes a position, it's Cenk Uygur. He's just, he just believes his position. He's just wrong. I think taking the money is perfectly fine in this case. I understand that. I typically argue that people taking a huge amount of money mean they're bought. I get that. I get that. Make that argument for everybody else. But in this case, this is my buddy. I've known this guy for a while. He's a good, noble gentleman, and in no way does the same rule that I use for everybody else. Does that rule apply to Mr. Cenk Uygur? It doesn't. I understand that the network has become MSNBC light. I get that. I understand that in times where I'm angry, I say that these guys are bought. I understand in times when I'm flipping out, I point to the problems associated with the people who they're having, especially that State of the Union show. I get that. But if you ask me on any random day, I would say there's no problem at all with them taking this much cash. That's what we're being told. Ultimately, that's what's taking place. The United States is an ally to Britain, who is an ally to France, who is an ally to Germany. All of these countries are Western nations. All of these countries, for the most part, are NATO, and they have set a certain world order. And in they having this particular world order, one country who's friends with the other countries flips out, and everybody else does the same thing. That is not indicative of anything other than those countries are allies with one another. Let's be honest. There is no legitimacy here, seeing as there's somewhat of a selective justice in the way that these guys go about their affairs. They're friends. Be honest. You're saying this as if this gives some legitimacy to what's taking place. They gave this evidence, presumably, to friends of theirs, and their friends of theirs evaluated the evidence. Are you saying these friends of theirs are just doing this because they're friends? Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. There's no legitimacy in this process. They're friends. They're following suit. There's been no information that's been presented to the public itself. And until the public gets to look at what they're using to vilify Russia like this, it should be looked at with skepticism. Were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Was that evidence presumably, quote unquote, shared with the other governments that decided to go in line with the United States to kill 1 million Iraqis? Let's keep going.
Yes, you're right. That is the argument we are hearing. We're hearing it is backed up by intelligence that they have. And it's true that they have managed to convince NATO allies in particular to join them in taking some action. Well, I was in the Foreign Office when we had intelligence information on Iraqi WMD. And that Iraqi WMD intelligence was shared with other nations and succeeded in convincing some of them to actually go further than expelling diplomats, join in military action against Iraq. And it turned out to be a pack of lies. So I am never again going to have much time for anybody who makes the mistake of saying, well, the government have intelligence that says this, therefore it must be correct. We have to maintain skepticism until we see something that actually convinces us. And so far, I have seen nothing which convinces me.
So you think that it's a reasonable comparison, the suggestion that the weapons of mass destruction were being hidden by the Iraqi regime compared to Novichok being used to potentially trying to kill an ex-KGB agent in Salisbury?
What is the reasonable comparison is the fact that when government tells you that it knows this because it has intelligence information, Iraq shows us we can't always trust them, and we would be foolish to trust them without more evidence, proper evidence being given. This is supposed to be a police investigation. This was a crime. Police investigations proceed by forensics. They proceed by finding out who actually did it, who administered the substance, and they go on a criminal standard of proof. What I want to see is results of an actual investigation with actual evidence that would stand up in court. That's what we should be looking to here, not some wild accusations thrown about by Boris Johnson.
Presumably, I'm guessing that could...
Kate, presumably Burleigh. He's a rational human being. He's a rational human being. Yes, he's a former ambassador to Uzbekistan, but he can be bobbed down the street. He's being a rational human being. I lived through weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Because I lived through weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, I would advise no one else should just take the government's word for it. They said there were weapons, there weren't, they lied. And because of those lies, all of those people died. I, as a human being who lived through that, and who have a brain, who have eyes and ears, and the capacity to think and reason, I am going to use those faculties, those God-given faculties, those nature-given faculties, whatever you want to ascribe it to, but whatever, those faculties, to learn from my mistakes. If I made the mistake that when I heard the government said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and I had this idea that government is not going to lie to me on a scale like this, or government is going to tell me the truth, and government has intelligence for these things, and I find out the government lied, then I have a precedent. I have a precedent. History sticks to itself. I can remember that stuff. I don't just blink from one moment to the next, completely forgetting what took place in a previous moment. History sticks to itself. You would be insane not to have memory of that, and not to use the memory of those events to guide what you do going forward. That's a rational human being. That's what that is. Everyone should think that way. Everyone should think that way. When you're dealing with power, when you're dealing with government, they are not self-justifying institutions. Just because you have an organization that's intact, it is not justifies itself. It could be intact for 100 years. The existence of an organization is not, in fact, justification for the existence of that organization. It needs to justify its existence by the things that it does. In this case, the British government is making a case, knowing full well that there's a precedent of failure in the same way and in the same terms that this is coming out. And a large plank of the evidence that these guys are putting out has just fallen away and is found to be lies. He's rational. He hasn't said anything mind-blowing. He's just said, I'm a rational human being. Let's keep going. This is how people should think when they're thinking about government and they're talking about power. This is a workable point of view of the world that should be espoused. It should be... I would argue that he's not being overly cynical. He's not being anything. He's just saying, the government has presented me with no evidence. How on earth can I evaluate what the government is telling me if I don't have evidence? They have a precedent of lying. Because they have a precedent of lying, I need to really be very careful about what they tell me, because I don't want to fall for the BS again. Let him keep going. I like what he's saying. I don't know who this guy is, but I love what he's saying. I know he's Prime Minister of Uzbekistan, and they are burying this interview for a reason, because he's being so rational. I can't have the British public seeing somebody being rational in the open like this. Fucking ruin our brand. Let's keep going. Stupid video. Come on.
Continues on while the war of diplomacy rages in the United Nations and other parts of the globe as well. And I suppose people will also be looking at the historical context of the fact that previously nerve agents have been used to kill former KGB spies, and polonium-210 was used to kill a former KGB spy on British soil.
That's certainly true. And as it happens, I think it was almost certainly a Russian actor, and probably a Russian state actor, who was responsible for the murder of Litvinenko. But that does not prove that that's what happened in this case. We need to beware of the round up the usual suspects mentality. Let me put this to you. Boris Johnson has said that the British government has evidence that for 10 years, Russia was stockpiling secretly Novichok in a 10-year program, and was also training assassins in secret assassination attempts using Novichok. Well, that kind of program would cost tens of millions and probably hundreds of millions of dollars. Why would you then blow it and make it public after keeping it secret for 10 years by just using it to murder or attempt to murder an old retired chap who lives in Salisbury who you let out of jail years ago? It really is. I mean, that is actually the weirdest conspiracy theory I've heard in this entire affair.
Don't know is the answer, but I'm sure that in the fullness of time it will all become apparent. I wonder what you think of the head of Porton Down's interview yesterday. I know that you've watched it in some detail and at length. What did you make of what he had to say?
Well, I would start by saying that I would like to congratulate Sky and congratulate their interviewer for their persistence in continually asking him again and again whether he was saying that they could not prove it was made in Russia, in the face of his answers, which were rather evasive and were designed to avoid giving the answer that was obviously true, that no, we cannot prove these are made in Russia. And in the end, that was made fairly plain by your interviewer. So may I congratulate your organisation on that to start with. I think that the insistence on getting in statements like it was probably a state actor who made the Novichok, which is dubious, was slightly worrying. It was also rather strange to me that at one stage he said that it was not Porton Down's job to identify who made it, which is not true. It is actually Porton Down's job. They are the British representatives on the Scientific Advisory Committee of the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and establishing who is making what chemical weapon where is very much a key part of their remit. But having said it wasn't their job to do that, he went on later in the interview to say, actually, they were still working on doing it. So I thought there were some evasions in his questions, but I thought, in general, your man did an extremely good job on getting the true facts.
Just to clarify, as far as Novichok, there are lots of strains of Novichok. In order to find out where the particular strain of Novichok came from that has potentially killed this ex-KGB spy, he's in a coma at the moment and threatened the life of his daughter and potentially a British police officer as well. You need to have the original strain in order to make the comparison. I think is that a reasonable assessment of the situation? Porton Down can't say where it came from unless they have an original sample from where it came from.
Well, I should say that I don't claim any expertise.
No, I'm just asking you, is that your understanding?
Organochemistry. My understanding is that unless you actually have a Russian Novichok, it would be difficult to state that this is precisely from the same batch, for example.
Okay, isn't that then what the chief exec said? Isn't that what he's saying? I can't prove it unless I have a strain of the original batch. Is that all he said? I
don't recall him mentioning.
But is that your understanding of what he was trying to say? I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert. You're an expert. That's why you're here. That's why I'm asking your opinion. In order to know where it came from, you have to have the original batch to make the comparison. Is that right?
I'm not sure that's 100% correct, because you can do a certain amount,
What percentage correct do you think it is?
Things. I really don't know. I'm not an organochemist. But what I did hear him say was he cannot prove it comes from Russia. And that's why he cannot prove it comes from Russia. It is somewhat incidental.
Well, it's not incidental, is it? Because he can't prove it unless he has the original batch. And we're slightly going round in circles. And I'm just asking whether you will accept that point, which is, unless you've got the original package.
What the fuck is taking place? What is going on? Why are you on this point? What does this matter? What does this matter? It's like, what does it matter to you? She's like a minute on this. I mean, you can understand his point, right? I mean, he did say that, right? I mean, that is what he said, right? I mean, you're on the show because you're an expert, right? I mean, come on. I mean, you would take that point. What is your point? What is your point? What is your point? The key point that he's telling you that's perfectly flat fact true is we cannot confirm that this comes from Russia. However that is, it doesn't matter. we cannot confirm that this is from Russia. Why? Why is this the thing that your circuit has has broken on, has blown a fuse on? Let her keep going. I mean, she's asking him to try to, like, even if you say yes, okay, maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. What does it matter? What does it matter? What it boils down to is you can't prove that it came from Russia. And Boris Johnson, I always have to stop a moment before I say Boris Johnson, because for some reason I want to say Gordon Brown. In my head comes up Gordon Brown, and so I'm like, no, I don't want to say Gordon Brown. I want to say Boris Johnson. Yeah, what does this matter? What does this matter? He couldn't confirm it. How? He couldn't confirm it. Why he couldn't confirm it is less relevant than the fact that he couldn't confirm it. And she's getting agitated over this. Let's let her keep going. Maybe she get to the point.
If you will, you can't make the comparison with that. So as a result, he can't say that it isn't from Russia, and he can't say that it is from Russia.
It's certainly true that he can't say it isn't from Russia, and I'm not saying it isn't from Russia. It might well be from Russia. I have no idea where it's from, and he has no idea where it's from, and you have no idea where it's from.
I'm not claiming otherwise.
No, nor am I. I'm also claiming I don't know where it's from.
Okay, because I know that you were quite critical. I mean, you're being very complimentary about our interview now, but I know that you were quite critical, saying that there had been edits and jump cuts, and we potentially had been put in a position where...
No. Don't let her get away with that. You do have a disposition. You have a disposition. For all your, this... Oh, I don't know. I'm not saying I know. I'm just being very assertive of pushing the government's perspective. But I'm not saying I have a perspective at all. Are you shitting me? This is what annoys me about media. It's not objective. She has a perspective. She has a point of view. That point of view lines up with the government perspective of what takes place. Pretending as if you don't have a perspective makes me somewhat distrust you. Like, understand what I mean by this. If it's one thing, I come from the left. I am unapologetic from the left. When I am dealing with the issue, I'm dealing with it from the standpoint of a humanitarian basis. That's my perspective. That's the way I look at it. That's how I orient myself to the world. It is what it is. It's not right, wrong, anything in between. It just is what it is. That's the way I come at things. I think that gets you a sustainable world. I think that gets you a world with people happier and prosperous. And I think we need to reorganize and redefine our value system. That's what I think. That's my perspective. There will be some things that are emphasized and other things that deprioritize, because some things will be more important to me than not. If you're on a right-wing channel, there will be things that you would prioritize versus not. You know where I'm coming from when you're looking at me and when I'm telling you this. My perspective of the show is not objectivity from the standpoint of I'm floating in a void and everything is equal. Even that is a perspective. Like, there's no way you can get away from it. You always have a filter. The question becomes, what is that filter? And are you telling that audience that filter in advance so the audience at the very least knows where you come from? She's saying, to some degree, I don't have a perspective in this. I am just spouting what the government is saying. And I am critical of your point of view. And why are you critical of the point of view if you don't have a point of view of your own? You have a perspective. You have a perspective. And stop acting like you don't have a perspective. I'm just saying what the government is saying on this. And I'm just pushing back on what you're saying because I'm saying what the government is saying. But I personally don't have a perspective. I'm not saying anything. Whatever. Let's keep going.
We were being told to ask things by third parties in the room. I mean, I don't know if you can clarify that for us now.
I would love to clarify that. There was a very definite cut to his last sentence. There's a very definite, and people can look at it. They can look at the video of it and check if there's any truth from what I'm saying. And his final statement, where he came out saying it was probably a non-state actor, is not. Sorry, it was probably had to be made by a state actor. That final statement was not in response at all to the question he'd just been asked. Was preceded by a very definite cut and a very definite change of camera angle, and I believe a slight change of camera position. So my point was simply that I think that he was meant to say it was probably a state actor in order to implicate Russia, and that sentence had plainly been tacked on at the end. My supposition is.
So you think that we did? So just to clarify, what are you actually saying there? You're saying that we changed the context of what he was saying.
No, not at all. I'm saying that he added that on later because it plainly was not part of the same answer onto which it was tacked, and anyone can see that.
Can I just clarify that?
A petty grievance. You have a grievance with him. Is that what this is? This is even worse. I kind of wish you would have just had a political perspective. Like, I kind of wish you were being pissy with him just because you were angry at... Hey, in fact... Okay, Burley. Can we not do this? Can we just not do this? Can you not bring somebody on your show and then essentially browbeat the guy? And this still could be a political perspective, so don't misunderstand me, but it seems like this is a petty grievance at this point. One of two things is taking place. Either you don't like his political perspective to such a degree that you want to find something else to bring up, to hit him in the knees with, because he's not following the script. Or you indeed are to some degree this petty, where you're bringing him on for some kind of thing where you can hit him in the knees that has nothing to do with the Skripal case and nothing to do with him being an expert. Or nothing to do with his experience. Let's keep going. Let's see where this goes.
For you, if I may, Mr. Murray, if you'll indulge me for just a moment. There were two cameras rolling. They were rolling the whole time. The tripods didn't move. The question that you're referring to was question 16 of 35. It was about 8 minutes in, and it was not at the end of the interview. Does that in any way quell your fears?
It's interesting to me because the example of the interview, I haven't seen the 16-minute interview, which isn't what you broadcast at the time.
No, sorry, just to clarify, it's not a 16-minute interview. I think that's probably where you're a little bit confused. Question 16 of 35.
Yes, but what my understanding is that those 35 questions, but from what I've read online, 35 questions could not be asked in 3 minutes 46 seconds. The interview which I have seen is the interview which you broadcast on Sky yesterday, which was 3 minutes 46 seconds long, and did not contain 35 questions.
Okay, and the fact that we had two cameras rolling the whole time and the tripods, because I don't know if you know much about television, but when you try and move a tripod with a great big heavy camera on it, you are quite aware of how you do it, unless you've got a dolly, which is like a tracking thingy, and we didn't have one of those.
Yes, I actually do know, as it happens, what a tripod is.
I'm sorry, I was looking at our camera.
That's not cool, Kay. That's not cool. That doesn't make you seem smart. This makes you look petty. A petty, small person. You don't like his political perspective. Fine. Why are you talking to him about fucking camera angles and camera work? How did the conversation devolve into this? How? This was you. You directed the conversation into this. He gave you a political perspective that pushed back on the stuff that the government was saying. And fact is, his only real political perspective, if you want to call it that, is rationality. It's the perspective of rationality. Now, either you're being petty about something that he said just to be petty, or you don't like his political disposition, in which case you want to drag him into the muck of this ridiculousness that you're talking now, running around stage, scooting about, talking about tripods and cameras. This is petty. Look at me when I'm talking to you, UK. This is extraordinarily petty. Let's let her finish.
Camera so that our viewers at home knew rather than you. I'm sure that you knew exactly what I was talking about, so forgive me.
That's okay, but I really don't know why you're trying to show that I'm not a television person or an organic
What I'm trying to say to you is that you criticised us. I'm just, if I may.
God damn it, I love you called it out. That's awesome. That's my point. Did you remember, there's a Lawrence O'Donnell interview with Anthony Weiner. And as Lawrence O'Donnell is having this interview, it's side by side. And Lawrence O'Donnell completely ambushes him and is like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And the entire interview was Lawrence O'Donnell asking him what's wrong with him and saying that it seems like he's has something wrong with him, some defect in him that requires him to need public life. Like, put a knife in the guy. He's doing that to make him look bad. The questions that she's asking him has nothing to do with the conversation. They're purely done just to make him look bad. Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Look at this other stuff that has nothing to do with the rationality that he's giving us early on. What he's saying here could be right, but it doesn't really matter. What he's saying here doesn't matter one iota. All that matters is I need to make him look bad because what he said before is just too rational. It's too rational. That's what this is. And I love the fact that he called it out. Sometimes interviewers don't know what the fuck is taking place. What the fuck just took place? How did we get into that? No, I'm glad he called it out. Why are you trying to make me look not intelligent? I've given you the answers that you wanted. You asked me questions. I answered the questions. I disagree with the government's position. What's your issue? Why are we talking about camera angles and stupid ridiculousness like this? Let's keep going. I like that. Good job.
What I'm trying to say is that you criticised us and tried to suggest that we changed an interview to change the end of a sentence in order for it to potentially distract from what might have been said previously by this gentleman. What I'm trying to say to you in response is that that is absolutely outrageous that you would say that. And as a result, I am illustrating to you that that has not happened. And I mean, if you just want to say, actually, on balance, given the evidence that you've given to me, I accept that, then we can move on.
Plainly, what's happened is that Sky recorded a very long interview with 35
We did what,
questions.
sorry?
You recorded a very long
We
interview
did, you're
with
right.
35 questions.
Yeah.
You then cut it down to a piece which you broadcast, which I saw, which was 3 minutes, 46 seconds long. Therefore, there were edits in it. And that's it. And I accept that what you said happened.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's just that I know that you were talking about us, on other broadcasters, and I just wanted to clarify that we didn't do what you claimed that we'd done. If I may go back to the story about Russia now, and indeed, if in the fullness of time it is proven that Russia was responsible, not saying they were, but if they were responsible, what sanctions do you think should be taken?
Well, I think if it were proven that Russia were responsible, then the sanctions which the British government has taken so far are wholly inadequate. It doesn't actually help it doesn't do much to expel a few diplomats. Diplomats are not terrifically useful. I was one myself, and a few more or less doesn't make an enormous difference. So I think that if it were in the fullness of time to be proven that Russia was responsible, we should take much tougher action, including action against the Russian oligarchs who openly flaunt their enormous wealth in London and buy properties here.
Mm. And if it's proven in the fullness of time that it wasn't Russia, should the Prime Minister resign?
Certainly, and Boris Johnson should resign, and the whole cabinet should resign, and we should have a general election. I think much of the country would welcome that.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. We appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
That is one of the weirdest interviews that I think I've ever seen. No, there have been a few. The one with Alex Jones was probably the weirdest. But that was a really bizarre interview. You bring the guy on to talk about Russia and Skripal. You seem to have a clear disposition from the standpoint of the government, or at the very least lean towards the government disposition, while at the same token trying to, I guess, feign objectivity. And then you go into this rabbit hole of seeming surly and hurt by something he said on some other channel. And I'm stuck with this thing of, is she really this pissed off at something he said on the other channel? Or are you pissed off at his point of view and you want to kind of gut his point of view by doing this and then bouncing back to the Skripals? I don't know which. Both look bad. It doesn't really matter which. Both look bad. This interview looked weird and bizarre. This guy is uber rational. Love the guy. Absolutely love the guy. I'm gonna have to look up his other content, see if he has anything else. But what he said here is not mind-blowing. It's, I need to wait. I need to see evidence. That's what I need to see. That's what I'm waiting on. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. The government lied to us once. I'm not going to take, just because the government says something as being, the absolute word of God. I think it is rational, and I think it is necessary for people to be skeptical of their government when they say things are based purely on intelligence. Rational. Absolutely, uber, exceptionally rational. I love it. I can't believe there are people here at 4:40 in the morning. I'll take it. Let's see. I find it interesting she uses the word outrageous. She doesn't say it's not true, which was the whole point at the time she took the interview. Yeah, I didn't, I looked at it as she's like, they may, presumably. They don't know. That's all he's saying. Like, if you're saying, I agree with you that they don't know, then why are we, it's like, why is this a mind-blowing position to take of, we don't know? I think the difference is, she's giving the government the benefit of the doubt, and he's saying, I'm skeptical. That seems to be the only distinction in these things. Let's see. Yeah, who needs the truth? Let them 3,000 dead simply rot and pickle on the propaganda and lies. Yeah. Let's see. Somebody's pissed off in my chat. Who's pissed off and what? Nicholas Shadusky. Not to mention, conveniently hit a specific spot that harbored vital information for an investigation. She has just destroyed any semblance of credibility she may have had. What a wacko. She flipped out royally. Like I said, I don't know which. Sky News buried this interview. They did not put this interview up. They did not put this interview up. I mean, they put the other interviews up, and then look how surly, like I said, she's being all surly to him when he's asking about it. Oh, Craig, maybe you just weren't that interesting, buddy. No, maybe you flipping out in the interview looked bad. You look bad. That's what it is. It's nothing to do with Craig. Craig was uber rational. You were the problem in that interview. You were the factor in that interview that seemed off tinge, losing your goddamn mind. Live interviews are live. Recorded interviews are pre-recorded to play out on a live show. Now, if you excuse me, I need to choose a ribbon for my hair because you're just so unimportant to me now. What is her issue? What is her issue? You spit on her? Slapped her or something? I mean, shit, man. What is her issue? This interview was hidden. Craig Murray had been looking for days, and he gave it. That's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. I'm not going to keep this one long. I mean, 53 minutes, so you know what I mean. I mean, this was like 18 minutes by itself, so is what it is. I am glad that Craig Murray did this. Craig Murray, fucking awesome job. Gold star for you, buddy. Good job. You are loyal opposition. You are loyal opposition. Then you may take some hits, but that's called being loyal opposition. You are doing your country a service. And please continue to do that country a service. Rationality as a political perspective. Who knew? So I'll leave it at that. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, everyone.